Okay, so I think what we know from the Partition of India is it was basically started originally as a way to separate the Hindus from the Muslims. And so Pakistan became people who were Muslim, and then India became for people who were Hindu. And I think the biggest problem with this period in history is that when we look back at the Partition of India, and one of the questions for our class was whether or not we choose to support the Partition of India. And I'm not really sure exactly who supported it. It seems like there was some confusion for a while. There were a lot of people who claimed that that there wasn't going to be a split, that would be out of the question, some politicians. But then but then it happened, and I think a lot of people were confused by it. I think that um, I think that the general population didn't really support it. I think that there were people who didn't want British to continue to rule over them anymore, and that was what was the excitement from the partition, the upheaval to get colonialism out. Because as we saw from the videos in class, a lot of the colonials were super racist against the people who lived in India, which seems kind of ridiculous because that's, British Columbia didn't, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? So British Columbia didn't exactly come from that area, but they really imposed a lot of racist ideas on during this time period in that region. And so the reason why I think that the general population didn't really support it, besides those, the people who wanted colonialism out, is because I think there were a lot of people who knew that they would have to uproot and move to one place or the other. So that way they wouldn't have, they wouldn't be the minorities in the new Pakistan or the new India. And so I think that caused a lot of stress for families and people. And I mean, and what proceeded from there was literally a political vacuum. The British didn't care. I think it seemed to me that the British didn't really care what happened after they got out. They just wanted to get out and then let people from those regions deal with it themselves. It literally caused what we would call nowadays a political vacuum, where they didn't set up a very strong government in either places. They didn't really set up anything. They didn't set up any way for these refugees to be swapping to the two different new nations. And so what we saw was that there was a lot of confusion, violence, and no one really knew what to do. There was ethnic cleansings. It left the country very unstable. And now looking back on it, we can see why it was a bad idea in the first place. But I do think that there was a lot of the population who didn't want British to leave. Although the British Columbia people were racist and didn't really, weren't very kind to them. I think that there were a lot of people who were nervous about the new establishment of government in the two different countries and what they would do if they would have to move and swap living areas. And that's exactly what we see. And I think that would be the reason why people wouldn't support it. And I think if I lived in 1947, I wouldn't have supported the partition just because of that. I'd look at my home and be like, I don't want to have to leave this and go to either a Muslim or Hindu run country. I like where I am now. I like the establishment that I've made, and I wouldn't want to just uproot and move to some other place. And so that's kind of what I get from the partition of India. And so that's just my opinion. So you guys have a good day. Ding.